Hi, and welcome to Family Sociology. We're going to look at the chapter on getting together. Now, mate selection is a natural starting point for the exploration of family life. Most people regard this step as the beginning of a new family. Now, typically, mate selection is identified as either arranged or by the family or decided by the partners themselves. Now, in reality, there is a relationship continuum. There are several theories about mate selection, and each of the sociological perspectives has a slightly different view of this as well. Sexuality is an important aspect of most intimate relationships. Dating is a relatively new custom to North America, and we look at the development of the practice as well as some of the issues it involves. Because of the social expectations regarding mate selection, some groups of people may be disadvantaged in this domain. The beginning of a relationship is crucial to its later path, and the way the relationship is established is usually the way the relationship continues. Now, this chapter ends with a discussion of some of the obstacles to relationships. So in part 1, we're going to cover the family cycle, romantic love, and the wheel of love, the relationship continuum, and theories of mate selection. So let's begin this chapter. Woman and man meet, fall passionately in love, get married. However, this may be a myth, as many people experience with this pattern have not been so successful. So we're going to go look at some of the diversity and different ways in which we start families. We tend to first separate from our family of orientation. Now, your parents and your siblings and the family that you're raised in is your family of orientation. And so this family of orientation is to basically establish, who am I? Considering your education, your relationships with other people within your family and your family's friends, and what we're going to have to try to do, and I've mentioned this, to establish an intimate relationship. And we have to clarify what is meant by intimate, because this is an important first step to our launching from our families of orientation and creating what we will call our families of procreation. And it's often a very emotional and psychological than just a physical move. So the intimacy is more about the emotional connection and the ability to communicate openly and freely than it is about the physical, although physical is still important. Now, once someone is successfully launched, we may then consider a creation of our own family. Now, what do you bring to your family with us? This is your new family, and what not to bring, what we are as a couple, and what we want to create. There's a lot that goes on in creating a new family. Psychiatrist Erik Erikson, he indicates that one of the most important developmental tasks that in young adulthood is and I've brought this up earlier, intimacy. In this developmental task, intimacy has specific meaning. It is a sense of close emotional relationship with another person. It's the ability and the freedom to disclose your innermost self to another person. Now, this level of intimacy is not something we do and have with everybody, but just a select few. We each define the relationship of ourselves. Then we realign our relationship with our intimate partners, families, and friends. Essentially, we're moving from I to we. Now, this establishment of the foundation for a relationship begins with mate selection, the process of partner selection, and it begins our road to family. Now, this can be both heterosexual or homosexual. Essentially, you choose a life partner, you live together. You may never marry in some cases. You may marry before living together. You may cohabitate, then marry. Others don't marry at all. However, mate selection occurs for you It is divided into two basic streams: decided by the couple, decided by families of the couple. Now, both streams are tied to culture and the values of that culture. Now, we can consider two broad categories of cultures. The first one we'll reference is what's known as collectivist cultures. Now, they value group goals and are above individual desires and needs. Individualistic cultures, they value personal achievement and individual rights. Arranged marriages are more often associated with collectivist cultures. Now, interestingly, in most societies and historic periods, marriage has been at least partly arranged, based on familial considerations rather than individual desires. In South Asian families, for example, men are expected to provide financial support for their families of procreation as well as other relatives. If a father dies, his eldest son or brother will support his widow and children. Now, because they are not regarded as wage earners, women are also often devalued as financial liabilities. The well-being of the family as a whole takes priority over individual happiness. Now, although arranged marriages have become rarer, they do continue to occur in many parts of the world and among many immigrant groups in Western societies. There may be pressure on children in new Canadians to marry within their ethnic group. A common strategy used by parents is to restrict the social interactions of their children. Now, because they may want to follow customs that they've learned in Canada instead of those with their ethnic group, second-generation immigrants indicate that conflicts with their parents in the realm of dating and marriage are common. Forced marriages are marriages in which people are coerced into marrying against their will, very different from arranged marriages, in which the free and informed consent of both parties is present. Now, in contrast to South Asian society, mainstream North American culture values individual achievement. All people are responsible for their own success and for their well-being of the family and families of procreation. Both males and females are valued as individuals. Now, in this system, family tends to be defined more narrowly than in the South Asian society. When the individual's social security system fails, there is very little formal expectations that extended family members will help. Romantic love is more of a recent historical pursuit. The original term courtship is linked to 12th century France, where young knights performed deeds to prove themselves worthy of love from the lady of the manor. Given the knight's lack of financial resources, there's where it came from. Now, over time, sex and romantic love became gradually linked, along with emphasis on individuality. It was during the Industrial Revolution that young people wanted the right to choose their own mates. Love became the basis of marriage of Western society and has gradually shifted from arranged marriages towards more free choice. It was a more bumpy rather than a smooth shift, and occurred more quickly in some parts of the population than in others. The earliest settlers from Europe brought this tradition with them to North America, where this focus on romantic love and free choice was combined with the emphasis of individual achievement. Ira Reese, around 1980, developed the Wheel of Love, and according to this theory, all forms of love and friendship develop through 4 processes. The first is a feeling of rapport. Now, when people feel comfortable with each other, they reveal aspects of themselves, such as their experiences, their hopes, and their fears. Rapport is something that comes along with time, and sometimes it will be based on trust that rapport gets established. Secondly, is the second phase of self-revelation. This can cover many areas of life, or it can expose private feelings and ideas. Usually, only close relationships involved in deep revelation. These often encompass sexual activity. The third phase is the development of mutual dependencies. Individuals begin to rely on each other to share ideas, jokes, and intimate feelings. Thus, the fourth process is personal need fulfillment, and this comes into play. If needs are fulfilled, there is a growing rapport, and a circular process is renewed. Since women often tend to be more attuned to relationships, they may move more quickly to self-revelation and mutual dependency. It is important to note that arranged and self-chosen relationships fall on a continuum, as I mentioned in the introduction, with completely arranged marriages at one end and completely free choice, self-chosen unions at the other end. In North America, most individuals are at the romantic love at the end of the scale. We are socialized from childhood to fall in love. So is freedom of choice in a relationship development real? Theoretically, we can marry almost anyone we choose, but we are limited in many social and cultural ways. There are legal barriers to marrying certain people. One marriage at a time, for example. The incest taboo, and in some cultures, homosexual relationships are discouraged or are illegal. Now, we tend to rely on the field of eligibles. People who are considered acceptable potential partners by both the individual and by society that we live in. So when substantial age difference exists, women tend to be younger than their male partners. Now, some terms and concepts related to influence of our choices of the intimate relationship, well, there are a number. There are geographical factors. Now, they're important. We tend to marry within a specific regional area. Propinquity, Propinquity. Now, this process of choosing a partner on the basis of certain traits is known as assortative mating. Similarity over differences is what's been searching for. Similarity in regards to intelligence, education, ethnic background, religion, even attractiveness. Opposites attract may be true in physics, but not so much in relationships. Perhaps. Homogamy. Now, this term, homogamy, is the tendency to marry someone who is more similar to you. Now, there are some theories to mate selection, and we're going to review them here. One, evolutionary theory of mate selection basically states men and women have evolved different criteria for selecting mates. Women, because of the length of the pregnancy and breastfeeding, prefer men in long-term relationships who have social status and are physically strong. Men, because of women's fertility is not really obvious, prefer youth and attractiveness. Now, some of this comes from a historical background. Of course, in more current times, there might be a broader defining terms of this. Both men and women prefer kindness, good health, and dependability. A second theory on mate selection is complementary needs hypothesis, and it proposes that individuals feel more attracted to the potential partner who complements them, as reflected in the saying, opposites attract. Now, that is where I said it's better in physics, but not so much in relationships. But for some people, that complementary piece is important. 3 is similarity theory, and this suggests, as you might imagine, individuals feel most attracted to potential partners who are similar to them, as reflected by the saying, birds of a feather flock together. The 4th is social exchange theory, and this is based on the idea that individuals evaluate potential success of a relationship based on a number of comparisons. For example, peer comparisons, physical attractiveness in female partners, status and financial resources in the male partner. People tend to fall between the two extremes, using both exchange values and emotional appeals to attract a mate. And then there's the stimulus value role theory as our fifth, and it's based on the thought that couples pass through 3 stages in mate selecting. The first is what's known as attraction based on some sort of stimulus. Maybe the person's attracted because of your attractiveness, your money, your style. So there's the first level. They have to have a reason to be attracted. Secondly, if there is enough attraction, then they discuss values and beliefs, checking for compatibility. So you go from physical attraction, say, or some attractiveness to draw you to somebody, and once you have established a certain comfort and a rapport beginning, you might start then looking at values and beliefs. So we're getting deeper beneath the surface of who we communicate who we are to one another. Now we're getting into those areas that we may not share just with everybody all the time. And then third stage of this, if there's enough compatibility, common ground, and then they may decide to adopt and play the roles of a couple. And so they're looking at 3 stages. You just don't jump right into number 3 and go right into a couple role. Or if you do, you may have missed something that may have been valuable to the success of a relationship. Sociological perspective on mate selection. Well, let's consider our theoretical perspectives here. The structural functionalism. Mate selection is critical to social order and continuing of society. Our mating is a primary function of family to produce children. This matters regardless of mate selection method. Conflict. Well, mate selections tend to follow the existing class structure of society, including how it is that the dominant social groups seem to have some or have more choice in mate selection. The feminists, they're similar to conflict theories, but their division is based on gender. And here the feminists see women as objects of exchange based on looks rather than, while disregarding other criteria like accomplishments and other successes. Symbolic interactionalism. Well, they look at the communication in the developing relationship. They consider how and why of what attracts people to one another. So we've just quickly kind of gone over a review of this beginning section of getting together and starting a family of our own. We haven't yet had children. We're just getting together. So in part 2, we'll carry on with this chapter. All right, everybody. Bye for now and see you in part 2.